everyone! So, third time's the charm because iMovie keeps crashing on me. So this is the third time I've recorded this video. So, fingers crossed. Hopefully it works. So today I wanted to talk about compassion and chronic illness. And it's a big topic for me because I realized recently I wasn't practicing self-compassion. Also, the ways in which chronic illness has increased my compassion and empathy for others. And as well, just like some tools I have found to increase these things just in myself and in others. And some things to help, like, especially when I realize I'm not practicing self-compassion, what I think has been useful for me so far and sort of my hopes for the future on how I can do better, because I'm hoping to, just like in general in life, I always want to improve. And I hope that watching this, at least for anyone out there, I know it helps me to sort of talk it through, but hopefully if someone else is experiencing something similarly challenging, then maybe they're able to get something out of it as well, because I really just want to make sure that we're all able to help each other. And I know that I have learned a lot from going through this experience, and hopefully someone else can learn something as well. Or if you have someone in your life experiencing these things, maybe you can learn something about ways to help them or what they might be going through. So thank you so much for watching, and let's get into it. So I'm kind of going to go through parallelly. Did I just make that up? Probably. My English is getting really weird living abroad, and I'm weirdly okay with it. I mean, my Czech is not always improving at the same rate, but whatever, we'll figure it out. So at the same time where I'm talking about like ways I've realized that I might not have necessarily been practicing self-compassion, I'm going to talk about ways I've found to do more of that, or what I've sort of learned from that experience. So I guess the first biggest thing would be chronic illness in general, because I don't know, like I've known several people in my life throughout my life who have had some form of chronic health condition, illness, whatever. And I want to simultaneously be careful with the language I use because I don't want to offend anyone. And I don't want it to seem like I'm minimizing any of these things, but I also don't know the best way to talk about like all of these things at once at the same time. So in general, I sort of tend to just like talk about myself and my experience with this, but I absolutely want to emphasize that I am not in any way trying to minimize, downplay, or offend anyone. And if I have or I am, please let me know. And again, my deepest apologies, but I'll try to, reframe in the future and do a better job of that. So sort of going back to that with me, in my experience, I realized recently that I don't really consider myself to have a chronic illness or condition. And I think that's been part of the problem as it relates especially to self-compassion and practicing that actively. Because with me, and some of these things are gonna like circle back around and tie in. I feel like I communicate in a really weird way sometimes, so it's kind of like follow the bouncing ball, and eventually if you find it and keep track of it, it will make sense, I hope. But with me and my particular epilepsy and seizures, it's been frustrating and hard to sometimes practice compassion, which is why I've noticed this and I'm trying to get better, because it's not like a daily thing necessarily that I struggle with. So it's been challenging in that way because like I always struggle with trying to explain it and frame it to people in the proper way because it is a very serious thing. But basically the easiest way to say it is like, for a long time it could be fine, I could feel fine, I could honestly kind of forget about it. Like I take anticonvulsants twice a day, but outside of that, a lot of the times I'm not really thinking about it. However, when it gets bad, it can get really fucking bad really quickly, and that's where it's a problem, and that's where I need to take it seriously myself and to have other people know about it and take it seriously as well. Because when I'm having a bad brain day, as I call it, like when I'm experiencing high aura, when I feel like I'm gonna have a seizure, that is a very slippery slope. It's like going on thin ice, like hoping you don't step in the wrong place and go under the water. Like it's not cool. It's not like oh well, Megan's just being dramatic. Like I'm really not. And also, and this is something I am working on getting better at as well, because I both brought it up and it was pointed out to me recently in a conversation, that I don't do the best job of verbalizing when I'm struggling in general in anything, because I am very much like, "Ugh, I'll do it myself, I'll manage it myself, you know." But that can be very toxic, because usually at the time I mention something, it's a really big problem. It's not like, oh, I'm just mentioning this to let you know, like, I'm not feeling well. It's like, I'm telling you I'm not feeling well because I'm feeling really fucking badly. Like, it's a really big problem. But I'm phrasing it as like, oh yeah, I'm not really feeling that great today. But that for me usually means like I am like doing my best to like focus and center and like sitting on the tram staring at one thing so that I don't vomit or pass out. That's when I'm saying like, oh, I don't feel well. And that's something, again, I need to work on, because otherwise people have no way of knowing if it's serious or not. But that being said, because it's not like constant all the time, like I'm not, permanently in pain or like daily having seizures every day. So for me, I think that I wasn't really fully accepting that I did have an cron going. I almost said cron going. That's cool. An ongoing or chronic situation, because it's easier to forget about, like I said. It's also something that I need to not forget about and pay a lot of attention to, and I try to research it and stuff, but it's definitely gotten a lot better than it was in the spring when it was daily and when it was horrific every day. That was a horrible time for me, and it's gotten a lot better since then. So I'm able to live my life in a pretty chill way a lot of the time. But like I said, when I'm not, I'm really not. And unfortunately, I realized I've been using those moments instead of as a way to practice compassion to myself, as a way to get angry and frustrated and have this my body as a prison mentality, which is not fair and it's not sending a good message to me. I think that's an important thing to mention, because it does, on a subconscious level, register with your body and mind when you're doing these things. And again, right now in this moment, I'm talking about myself. Like, so when I'm sitting there telling myself when I am having a bad brain day, like, oh my God, I thought we were over this. I thought we were better. I thought we were fine. Basically, what I'm telling myself is, you are failing right now. You are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. This is wrong. You're supposed to be fine. You're supposed to be managing your epilepsy. You're supposed to be okay. And I know for me personally, some of that came from initially like people in my life sort of treating me in that way and sort of saying these things to me. But again, trying to hold compassion for other people, I don't think that necessarily it was meant in like a negative way, always, 100% of the time for all of those people. Maybe some of them, yes, but like I think that it's the natural response for a lot of people, at least it has been for me, to be supportive of people and to be like, oh yeah, you can do this, you've got it, you can fight this, you can do it. But it's been important for me personally with myself, I've noticed, to separate that from, you are only doing a good job if you're not having seizures or if you're not having any symptoms, because it's not something that I can control always. And I'm doing a lot to try and control it. I'm taking an online anxiety class. I've been working on my anxiety. I've been talking about it in therapy. And honestly, my therapist has been more helpful than my neurologist when it comes to epilepsy. Like, to a degree that's not even funny. It's like funny because it's so not funny. I'm like, you're supposed to be an epilepsy specialist and you have done fuck all. Like, yeah, basically, no, nothing. I was going to say outside of prescribing me anticonvulsants, but he didn't even do that. A different neurologist did. So yeah, not always helpful. Not to say that you shouldn't go to a neurologist if you're having any kind of brain issues. You should, but do some research and try to find one that fits for you. I have been chilling with mine sort of because we're in the middle of a global pandemic and I don't want to go to the hospital. And also I don't really feel like I'm in a place anymore where I need like regular interactions with a neurologist. Like, I've managed it to the point where like I can sort of hang out and delay some brain tests that I probably could find some use out of, or some things that I sort of want to do with it until later. Luckily, I feel very grateful for that. But definitely do want to mention that. Like, don't feel like if you go to one doctor and you don't feel like they're a good fit for you, you're like, well, this is my doctor. I am only doing that because it's a global pandemic and I don't want to go to the hospital. So basically, like along with that of like telling myself like, oh, you like are only doing a good job essentially like if you're managing it in this way, if you're not experiencing any symptoms at all. So one of the things that's been sort of a wake-up call with me with having a chronic condition is that it's chronic. You know, like the definition of chronic is like frequent, reoccurring. It's something that's going to keep happening or that's constantly happening depending on who you are, what the situation is, you know? And it's something that's been really difficult for me, honestly, because I am by nature a very active person. I like being active. I like running. If you know me, you know that about me. I typically go running almost every day. I've been toning it down, like typically, you know, like 5 days a week, 6 days a week. But right now I'm injured, so I'm not running. But even still, like I like to do some kind of exercise. I like to move. I like to go on walks. Like I like action and movement. And it's really difficult for me when I have to lay down, when I have to take a nap because I'm going to faint or pass out or potentially have a seizure if I don't, or just feel really shitty if I don't. So that's been really difficult for me. And I know it's been difficult for sometimes for some of the people in my life because it's been verbalized to me that it is not necessarily with these words, but that it is frustrating, that it is like, are you sure you're really feeling bad? Like, are you okay? That like, could you still, you know, like teach, come to work, like do this thing? Like, I could. Do I want to have a seizure in front of all my kids and potentially scar them for life? No, no, not at all. Never, 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 never do I want that. That is my literal nightmare that will happen. I think about it all the time, which is again not really helpful, which is why I'm taking the anxiety class. So it's a challenging thing because sometimes it gets in this circular thing. But I want to point that out. Like if you are experiencing any kind of chronic illness, chronic health situation, to not blame yourself, but to also try. And I know it's hard because I have, like I said, not been that nice to myself about it, but like try not to put it on you of like, oh, well, you're whatever, weak, not doing a good job, whatever it is, because you were having these symptoms. It's not always within your control. Like sometimes you can, you know, lessen these things. Sometimes you can get rid of them completely. Sometimes not. And that's okay. Even if it's challenging. I mean, I'm not saying like, just give up. Absolutely. Like keep trying, but also cut yourself some slack and notice your successes. And that's something that I've been trying to do a better job of like, especially in the moment that you're having a bad time, that is not the time to think about all the other times you've been having a bad time. It's the time to practice compassion and sort of treat yourself like you would the tiny version of you. And by that I mean like what I try to do is think of like tiny Megan, little tiny young Megan, because it's a lot easier I find to be compassionate with the young version of you, with your inner child. And this is an awesome tool I got from my therapist, which can be applied in so many different situations, but I've been trying to do it with epilepsy symptoms of like, think about it like this. So I'm going to put it back again to me. So if tiny Megan, if young child Megan came up to me and was crying and was telling me how sick they were and how they felt horrible and they wanted to just sleep and how they felt like they were going to throw up or faint or have a seizure, would I tell tiny Megan, fuck you? Sucks to suck. Like you should be doing a better job. You should be working. It's a work day, so that sucks for you. You know, you should feel better already. Absolutely not. I would never do that because that is horrible. So don't do it to yourself as adult you because it registers on some level. You're telling your brain like, well, that sucks for you, but you need to get over it, ignore it. And your body is telling you it needs help in these moments. Like, especially with me in epilepsy, it's telling me like, please don't be in this situation. Please don't be thinking about this stressful thing or doing this stressful thing or whatever it is. It's like a cry for help in the initial phases of my aura symptoms for me. Like I've experienced it enough to sort of see how it progresses, and it's like sort of like a discomfort. Okay, now it's like speaking up, it's getting louder, it's screaming, and then the end result is usually me in an ambulance. So I have time typically where my body is trying to tell me something and I can act. But if I don't, and I have tried this because the second seizure I had, this is exactly what happened, where it was weird because I don't remember the first one at all, but the second one, And I think I've told this story before, but just for another reference, I was walking down the street and I remember thinking clearly, fuck, I'm going to have a seizure. But I was walking to the train and I was like, okay, if I just make it to the train, I can sit down, I can relax, and then I have like however much time on the train where I can just like breathe and chill. I just need to make it to the train. And so I pushed it and I was like walking as fast as I could, just like mentally panicking. I was like, I can make it, I can make it, I can make it. This is scary. And guess what? Spoiler alert, didn't fucking make it. Didn't make it at all. Woke up in an ambulance. So like, especially for me, like in my situation, but even if that's not the case for you, even if it's not a life-threatening situation, I hate this need, and I think some of it comes from a society thing, some of it comes from like a relational thing, but as much as is possible, don't fight that. Like, lean into what you need to do to help yourself. Don't be like, okay, I'm gonna ignore that and just do these things because it's a work day, because it's this. No, that's not fair to you, your health, your body. It's not going to help anyone in this situation, because like if you go and do go to work or go do, whatever event, hang out with a friend, hang out with family, whatever it is that you're doing that day, are you going to be the best version of yourself? Probably not, because you're in pain, you're struggling in some way, you're having these health challenges. So it's not useful to you or to them to go do that. And it's telling your body and your mind that you don't really care that much about your health. And that might be like a bit of an intense way to say it, but like on some level, it's telling your body that you're going to continuously prioritize other things over your health. And that sends a very negative image to your health and to your body. Because like I said, at least for me, that voice gets louder when I'm experiencing pre-seizure symptoms. And it's sort of similar with emotions anyways, like the way emotions are manifest, like the way that they manifest and exhibit themselves in your body, especially with stress and anxiety. Like if you, or fear or something, with some of these more like negative emotions, it's just sending a signal. It's just your body trying to tell you something. And it might say it at first in a whisper. It might be like, this is kind of scary. Ooh. And if you're like, oh, what's scary? And it's like, oh, well, okay, I'm glad you asked. This thing over here, it's scary. We don't want to do it. We don't like it. Can we not go there? Can we not do this thing? And if you're like, all right, sure, whatever, let's go this way instead. And your body's like, woo, oh my God, thank you. I was really worried there for a second, but you listened. Thank you so much. And think about then instead, what happens when you ignore that voice? Then it might be like, oh, maybe you didn't hear me. I will speak up now. So I'll be like, hey, this thing is scary. And so that essentially that translates into that fear or that stress or that anxiety increasing. And then if you're like, we don't have time for this fear, we have a work day, then it might start shouting at you, because it's like, you are not hearing me. I am really freaked out. And that is exactly what happens with me with aura symptoms. But instead of, it's kind of all three of the things at once: fear, anxiety, and stress. Anxiety I find to be the worst one, but it becomes crippling for me very quickly when I ignore it. And it has led to multiple seizures and to multiple close calls to seizures where I was like basically hyperventilating by the time I got out of the situation, and was like, my heart was pounding, I was sweating, I thought I was going to faint, like just as close to a seizure as I could possibly get without having one, which is very draining on my body and mind. It's not a good time. So that would be a big piece of advice I have for you: to try that inner child exercise, or do whatever you have to do to make sure that you're listening to your body and brain, like whatever it is that you need to deal with. And that comes from a bit of like self-awareness. So be as aware as you possibly can be about what helps versus what exacerbates the situation. So keep a journal, like do whatever it is that you think will help. And going on with keeping a journal, I actually found something recently that I was like, this is sweet. And it's actually on an educational website we use for preschool. So the website is called Twinkle, and it's just like educational resources. But I randomly stumbled across this, and luckily I have a printer at home, because I've printed out like 1,000. I'm doing them like every day. Not realistically 1,000. I think I did 5. That was like a huge exaggeration. But I found it really helpful, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. So, boop. It basically says autumn winter daily well-being journal, and says days of the week. There's a little face where you can draw a little picture of how you feel that day and write some notes. And there's also space for daily gratitude, positive thoughts of the day, random acts of kindness, and reflections of the day. I was like, does someone know me personally? These are all my favorite things. But I would say what's most important in terms of chronic health situations is really actively, as much as you can, do it daily if you know have the time for it and motivation. But I think it would be helpful to write down as much information as you possibly can so that you are able to notice these patterns, because sometimes you might not realize. I mean, I am constantly, like almost every day, noticing new things. I'm like, wait, what? Like, it's such good information you can have about your body. Also very helpful that I have a Garmin now. I'm not good at showing things on camera. Whoa, there it is. Which it's, to me, like sort of irrelevant what brand it is. But if you have any kind of phone app or fitness watch thing that can track your sleep, so you're keeping track of how much sleep you're getting, the quality of your sleep, what foods you ate during the day, how your mood was, certain events that you had, so you can even pair like, okay, when I have these certain recurring events, this is my mood, whether positive or negative. And then it can help you see, again, both positive and negative. If you're like, wow, I'm sort of in a low mood, or these things really help me, doing those things more and pairing that, especially like something I've been really, really leaning into this past year has been, when I notice I'm in a low mood, going hardcore into self-care. Like, I'm gonna light candles, I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna journal, I'm gonna watch something happy, I'm going to talk to a friend, I'm gonna write down everything I'm grateful for, I'm gonna listen to a good podcast, music that makes me happy, like one thing after another, after another, after another, rather than sitting in that mood and making it worse. And I don't mean to say like ignore bad moods. Definitely don't. Like, ask yourself, okay, why, and like really try to explore it. Don't ignore it at all, but rather like being an active participant in the creation of the life and mood that I want. So really going after these things that I know help me, rather than, maybe in the past. And even like, we can go back to July, because quite similarly, I couldn't run in July. I had injured myself just from like overuse, I think. Now it's actually, I think, a worse injury, unfortunately. But back in July, I was like, can't run, I guess I'll do nothing. I guess I'm just gonna like drink more and like do 0 exercises. Were my arms injured? No. Could I have done ab exercises? Yes. Could I have done arm exercises? Again, yes. Could I have done so many other things, Pilates, yoga, whatever? Absolutely. Did I do any of that for like, I don't even remember how long, like 2-3 weeks? No, I didn't do anything. I just felt sorry for myself and drank a lot of beer. And I was like, and guess what? My epilepsy symptoms were worse, which 5 out of 5 neurologists agree about the drinking alcohol thing. So that could be a whole separate thing. But I think it also has to, it like all sort of ties in together, like I wasn't eating as well. I was eating a lot more processed foods. So I was like, I just want to make a pizza and feel sad, which nothing wrong against that. Like, if you want to go eat pizza, go eat pizza, do whatever you want. But like, notice what's helpful and what's hurting is the main point. And notice if it is dietary, if it is, this, that, or the other thing. Be aware that that could change your mood or health for better or for worse, and what ties into what. So again, the more you write down and keep track of, the better you're going to be able to do that, because it will be different for everyone, of course. Next thing I wanted to talk about is comparing your health situation to others who either have worse or similar yet also worse health situations in a negative and destructive and dismissive way. Because guess what? That's something I did recently. So that was fun. That was a good time. Spoiler alert. No, it was not. So I want to just lead with saying, whatever your experience is, it is valid. It does not matter if you just found out you had something today or you've had something for 35 years. It is still valid. So going along with your feelings and experience being valid, it is not useful to compare your health condition to someone else's in a way that invalidates your own. So that is something I realized I was doing, because like I said, I don't have seizures every day, and I am so grateful for that. But there are people who are epileptic who do, or who have them every week, or whatever. I don't fully understand my relationship to my seizure condition. I don't know. I don't know. I experience a lot of, I don't know, like it's just, it is what it is. Like, I have had like weird conversations like with my neurologist, with other people, where they are sort of trying to make me like prove that I'm epileptic. I'm like, guess what? Don't want to be. I don't want to prove I'm epileptic at all. I would rather never have these problems. But the fact of the matter is that I do have seizures sometimes. and that I more frequently have pre-seizure symptoms, like not super frequently. I would say I have managed it down to about like once every few weeks, which is really good. When it's a bad time, it has been like it was in the spring, daily and horrible, like just a bad time. So, something I realized I was doing was looking at people who do have seizures more often than me, or who have worse problems than I do that cause them to have seizures, and thinking, wow, what do I have to complain about? Or I shouldn't even talk about seizures or epilepsy or seizure symptoms or anything related to it because my experience isn't valid compared to theirs. And that wasn't exactly word for word what I was saying to myself, but it basically was. So I guess just like I don't have a lot to say on that except for that it's not fair to do, and it's not helpful, and it's again one of the things that registers with your brain and body on a micro level where you're telling yourself this doesn't matter, we can't talk about this, we can't experience this because someone else has it worse. And I think it's something that people do in a lot of areas in life of like, oh, I have this problem, but there's someone who's in a war zone and who's starving. Those are real problems, and they may be worse than your problems, but that doesn't mean that your problems also don't exist and you're not experiencing them and they don't deserve to be dealt with. And it's a hard thing. It really is, because there's always going to be someone who's having a worse situation than you. And yet still, that does not mean that your experience isn't valid. So just be really careful with that, because it's something I've been experiencing lately. And also, sort of last thing I wanted to mention is just that it's okay to ask for help and to talk about these things with other people, and to also keep in mind that those people may or may not be the people closest to you. It's awesome if your best friends and family want to talk with you about these things. That's really great and really useful. And I mean, it feels pretty validating to be like, you are my best friend, you are this. But I would say, again, another thing to be careful with and to hold compassion with other people, that they may not be the people that you can necessarily really talk to on a deep level about your chronic health problems, because they just might not get it, or it might be really fucking scary for them. Like I've said, I've watched people have seizures. It was terrifying. I did not enjoy any part of it. And I know it's really scary for a lot of people in my life to talk about. And it can be isolating for the person experiencing it, for me, to feel like I can't talk to people about it. But I also constantly try and hold compassion that it's probably really scary for the people in my life to talk to me about it, to imagine me having a seizure, to imagine like not being like, one of my friends, for example, told me that it was really scary for them because they realized when we had all first started talking about it that they didn't know what to do if, for example, we were hanging out and I had a seizure. They had no idea. So keep those things in mind, that it might be scary for them. If someone's actively like being kind of a dick about it for whatever your health problem is, okay, maybe you don't even need that person in your life at all. But also, it is okay to get help from other people, or to like, I think it's very important. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it's very important to have people to be able to talk to, because like I said, it's a chronic thing, meaning that you're going to keep experiencing it, and you need to be able to have some outlet of like, this fucking sucks, I don't like this, or what have you found useful for this? So try to find some kind of community or person or separate people. They don't necessarily have to be like a community, like a group of people all together, but if there is some kind of like message board or forum of, like, for example, there's epilepsy.com. That's where I go to like find a lot of stuff. Or I know people who also have seizures, so we can be like, oh, isn't it horrible to have this thing happen? And that can be helpful for sure. And it can be like, wow, like I'm not alone in this. And that's why I started doing these videos initially, because I want people to not feel like they're alone. Because I was feeling, at the beginning, I just felt so alone all the time, because I felt like nobody even wanted to hear about it. And I was like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I thought I was dying. I thought I was going crazy. And I felt like nobody wanted to hear about it. And not nobody, but like not that many people, honestly, compared to the amount of people I tried to talk about it and the amount of people who actually wanted to listen. It was a pretty low number, I felt. But then once I started talking about it more, I found more people who, I could have that sense of community with. So for me, like, I talk to my therapist about a lot, and like I said, my therapist is more helpful than my neurologist, who I don't really talk to because he's not that helpful. I asked him one basic question that I already knew some of the answer to, and he told me he didn't know. So I was like, sick. Which, if you're wondering, I asked him what lifestyle things you can do to help reduce epilepsy symptoms, and he said nothing. Like, he literally said, there's nothing else you can do. I was like, that's not true. Actually, there have been like multiple peer-reviewed studies about diet and epilepsy and like lifestyle and epilepsy. There's entire websites about this. Like, what? Like, I didn't ask you that because I didn't know anything. I asked you because I thought you're a doctor, you will know more than me, but that does not appear to be the case. But holding compassion for him, maybe he doesn't have the kind of training that I would have gotten from my research. You know, maybe he has traditional medical training and what I'm looking at is not within that realm. I don't know. But it was not that great of a moment for me because this was at the height of I'm having a really bad time and I'm looking for answers. And to go to people who are in the medical profession and to not get them was like, now I'm back to being alone again. Like, and that's kind of how it felt. And again, that goes back to self-awareness, being aware that, like, okay, couple parts thing, like how I said, you know, don't necessarily feel like you have to go to the one doctor that you first talked to, but then also I was aware after looking at it of like, okay, the reason I was so upset by that was because I was feeling these feelings of complete and utter aloneness and like I was going to lose my mind and then die by myself. And then to have that further invalidated by someone in the medical professional that I thought was supposed to help me. So be aware of those things for sure. But like, do talk to people about it. And like I said, if you start talking to your friends and family and they're like, I don't know what to do or say, talk to somebody else. Keep looking, keep finding ways because it might be challenging, but you're not alone and you will find somebody that will help you because that's been my experience. You know, I felt really fucking alone, even though I was surrounded by people. And I don't anymore, you know. I've found my own community and ways to go about it, and my friends have educated themselves on it a bit, which has been awesome, and I really appreciate it. But I also don't want to put the whole burden of it on them of like, you have to deal with this, this has to be the only thing we talk about. So it's a complicated thing, and there's probably so many more things that we could talk about this, but I'm just going to keep sharing my thoughts on it and my journey, and hopefully it helps because I know that it's hard, and I know that I haven't always been compassionate in the past towards people in my life who've had chronic health problems. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity it's given me to grow that empathy and grow that compassion towards them, and then also now towards myself going through it. So I hope this has helped. Sorry, this is such a long video. I might have broken this into small videos. We'll see. Thank you so much for watching. Love you all so much.